Hello and welcome back. I've been a photographer for most of my working life in one shape or form, getting on for nearly 40 years now. There was a time in the 1990s when I was working in graphic design more than photography, but the majority of my career has been spent taking pictures. Much of my work revolved around the celebrity and fashion world, and I only started taking a keen interest in street photography about 12 years ago. Whilst attending fashion shows, shoots and celebrity gatherings, I started to notice interesting things away from the main attractions and started to capture them. This led to a curiosity about everyday happenings and life on the streets, and it quickly became an obsession for me as I experimented with different types of street photography until I found the one form that I most liked to do. High contrast, black and white pictures, minimalist in style, with shape and form being the main criteria. Throughout my career, the aim has always been to create something aesthetically pleasing, to take the view in front of me and make a personal impression of it. In the introduction to my book, Fine Art Street Photography, I wrote that my main inspiration comes from how the light affects the urban environment and the mood that it projects at the different times of day. How cool and clear the light can be in the morning, creating sharp lines of shadow and jewel-like highlights. And then in the late afternoon, how warm and subtle it becomes as the sun's dying rays catch the human traffic as it moves through the lengthening shadows. In this video, I'm going to look at what I personally consider to be my best and also my favourite shots. I've selected 10 pictures that I think sum up my style and illustrate what I look for in an image. Along the way, I'll explain how I went about taking them and also give some insight into them. The photographs I've selected are in no particular order, so there is no number 10 and no number 1 favourite image. They are simply 10 pictures that have pleased me for reasons that I should explain as we look at them. Taken in March of 2013, this first image was part of a series I did about working in the city. The pictures in the series represented both the journey to and from work, and also the hours during the day, where although people were outside of their working spaces, having lunch, etc., they were nonetheless under the spell of their employment. I call this image behind bars because for some people the idea of the working day is like some sort of entrapment, being ensnared by a time and place and longing to break free of the confinement. Taken from a high walk in the Barbican district of the City of London, I was immediately attracted to the lines of shadow being cast by some railings. I was looking for ways in which to capture people that seemed to suggest that they were being confined by their environment. Looking down, I noticed this chap who looked like he was having a cigarette break outside the entrance to an office below. It took me a few shots to capture him where I wanted him because he kept wandering about as he smoked. I quickly positioned myself so that he appeared where I wanted him. I spot metered and focused on the light area of ground around his feet and then recomposed. It was a satisfying capture. I stopped down to get full depth of field so that the whole scene, including the lines of shadow, were fully focused. Sadly, the high walk I captured this from was pulled down some years ago, and with it went one of my favourite spots for street photography. This is another image taken from the same place around about the same time. This picture was taken one chilly early spring morning around 7:30 AM. This stretch of road is one of the main thoroughfares that connect the Bank of England, the financial district and the bus and rail links. In the picture, an early morning arrival strides purposefully towards his place of work, highlighted by the low early sun which casts a shadow that seems to lurk a little menacingly. Our man is somewhat dwarfed by the enormity of the brick wall, but his stride suggests a confidence with which to face the day ahead. The next image, another from the city, strikes a slightly different note. These two businessmen, in close discussion with each other, look like they have a plan, but I was drawn to the idea that here were two people who had it all sussed out, and they didn't mind who knew it. I noticed from a couple of shots that I took just before this, that at some point faces of people walking through here would become hidden by the shade. Therefore, I decided to use that moment to capture these two, and their anonymity would be secured. It wouldn't have bothered me to show their faces, but I felt the picture would have had less impact. Night photography should be an essential part of every street photographer's output. I have made a few videos extolling the virtues of getting out onto the streets after dark to look for striking and dramatic pictures. You never have to worry about the quality of the light or what the weather's up to, and the night lights are always on, ready and waiting. So for me, regular photo walks in the evening are what shooting through the winter months is mostly about. I can start as early as I like and I can go on as late as I like. This picture, taken in Camden Town in London, was taken about 9 p.m. one evening as I was coming to the end of my walk. This area of London has never really yielded much for me in terms of successful pictures at night or day, so I was pleased to come across this scene when least expecting it. I stood across the road as this person came out of the shop for a smoke. It's interesting how many pictures I have taken in similar situations, where people are hanging around outside buildings having a smoke. This particular puffer was shielding themselves against the cold, with hood up and turned against the stiff breeze. Their posture was perfect for my shot, as they stood neatly inside the triangle of light that I had focused on and exposed for. They weren't moving much, so I had a bit of time to get the shot to my satisfaction. I had to adjust things and overexpose a little in order to get some detail in the windows of the building above. The neon sign blew out, but that didn't really matter, and the falling light on the figure was sufficient to pick him out. I like it. I guess you might say it has a little of the Edward Hopper look about it. I've had a lot of love for this next photo. It seems to have captured the imagination for some people. It was taken in 2016 during the month of March as I wandered about with my camera one lunchtime on a workday. The trees were still bare and the absence of leaves allowed the early spring sunlight to filter through and cast this impressive and rather demonic looking shadow on the side of what I think was an art gallery. I rather like the idea of this because it looks as though the deep shapes of shadow emanate from the building itself, like they might be part of some sort of art installation or something. Either that or something has gone terribly wrong inside and this chap on the phone outside is calling for help. Anyway, those are things that went through my head when the idea of taking the picture came to me. The quality of the light in early spring can be excellent, and it's round about the month of March that I start to get really excited about doing street photography. After months of doing mostly night photography, it cheers me no end to experience days like the one on which I took this to get the creative juices flowing again, and once again look forward to some beautiful light. I love the abstract look that high contrast photography can produce. Extreme ends of the monochrome scale can create great geometric shapes and patterns of light and shade. I look for how the deep shadow areas can be the basis for an abstract style picture. I like to include the human form in one way or another if I can. With this one, the pair of legs protruding from the shadow area were the extra detail I wanted in order to bring scale and perspective to the whole scene. Humanizing it, if you like. We go from the dark clothing into the white trainers which protrude into the shadow. The swoop of the bench balances with the other geometry, and the wooden slats bring some further graphic interest. I underexpose, which help to darken the shadow areas without affecting the bright ones. There's only one colour image in my selection, but I do like it and it was a satisfying capture. It's a reflection shot that helped turn a mundane scene into something more interesting. I was just about to jump on the tube and head home when I spotted a chap in a hat slowly plodding his way through what was a very nondescript underpass. To my left was a window and a chance to create something with a reflection. There was a handy drawn curtain hanging in it and some safety stickers which provided a little graphic detail. You only get a second with this kind of situation, so you have to think and act quickly. You don't always get it right, but I was pretty happy with the outcome here. It has a little of the Saul Leiter about it, I think, which is no bad thing. When you realise the possibilities of shooting after dark, and you quickly learn how different urban spaces are to the daylight hours, it creates a whole new mindset about street photography. If you work during the day and your opportunities are limited, an evening photo walk is the perfect solution, especially during the winter months when the evenings get darker so much earlier. With this shot, I was walking over one of London's bridges, and I was looking at the metal structure of the bridge and noticed this aperture through which I could see down onto the path underneath. I liked the mechanics of it, and I thought that the scene looked a little bit like something from a dystopian thriller. I watched people walking through the space below until along came this chap with his rather languid walking style. He's a good focal point, and during post-processing I was able to bring back some detail in the bridge and the water below with a little dodging. Simple really, but effective. I like the impression that the environment dwarfs the human figure, who seems trapped within it. A semi-abstract picture is my next choice, and one that I had to wait around for to get the right moment. This comes from the East End of London, which is a rather hip neighbourhood and a fascinating place for street photography. Loads of street art, vintage shops and cool places to hang out. I've never had that much success there with my style of photography, but I was quite happy with this image. The strength and direction of the afternoon sun really brings the building to life. The shadows cast by the open window and the road signs add darker tones in an otherwise bright scene. After deciding on the framing, I felt that the picture needed something else on the left-hand side to give the right balance. It didn't quite work with a walking pedestrian because they appeared a bit nondescript. I saw a cyclist coming and thought they could be a better silhouetted shape. As well as the right tonal balance, the right mixture of shapes and sizes is important in an image like this. I talk a lot more about this in my book, which is available from the link in the description to the video below. This next picture is part of a series I was working on called Conversations. Typically two people deep in discussion, oblivious to their surroundings, and particularly me. This one looks like a setup. It's not, but it was taken one late night at the Tate Gallery in London. I was working there on a fashion show, and after most people had left, I noticed this couple locked in conversation with the light beaming down behind them. I couldn't believe my luck. I thought, what a scene. I fumbled with my camera in my excitement and kept screwing the shot up. I couldn't get focus and felt that I was going to miss it, but I managed to compose both myself and the shot and captured this just at the right moment. I like the supine posture of the figure on the right and then the confident pose of the other, with his left hand held up in a way to help stress whatever point he's making. And then there's the little case and the hipster short trousers, which adds some nice extra detail. The long leading lines of shadow work well, and the ambience of the space speaks for itself. I took a couple of other shots the same evening, which I will perhaps go into next time. But that's it for this video. I have enjoyed revisiting some of my favourite shots, and I hope it has been of interest to you. I might do another video like this with a bit more in the way of technical information, and perhaps featuring more night photography as we head into the darker evenings. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.